From Inc.com, this is the Inc. Productivity Tip. Expert opinions, valuable insight, and helpful advice from today's top business coaches, thought leaders, and entrepreneurs. Real wages are falling again, meaning there is a massive turnover wave brewing, with inflation outpacing pay growth for 4 consecutive months. Employers face a quiet retention crisis and a growing risk of mass defections once the job market thaws. Now, if you are an employer and you've been sensing acute tension among your workers, you are not imagining things. A recent study found that 88% of employees reported some degree of financial stress. The problem is that current economic data suggests business owners wanting to reduce that anxiety in their workplaces have few options beyond handing out very expensive pay hikes across their entire staff, raises that few can afford. Now, the culprit is the affordability crisis, as persistently high inflation not only increases prices of essential goods and housing, but now also regularly outpaces worker incomes. That's tightening the squeeze on employee finances and could fuel their mass defection to jobs with higher salaries once today's frozen labor market actually does thaw. Now, that scenario is leaving employers who want to help money-strapped workers with a dilemma, since official data suggests most companies cannot afford to boost pay to match cost of living hikes at this point. Official figures released last week showed prices in July rose by 3.4% compared to the same month last year. However, during the same period, hourly pay only increased by 3.2%, and that marked the 4th straight month of inflation outpacing income gains. That enduring imbalance is an historical anomaly. Aside from stretches of prolonged high costs increases like the pandemic jolt of 2021 and 2022, according to a recent New York Times report, real pay for that period decreased by 4% as over 9% price surges left income gains in the dust. With that history now starting to repeat itself, it should not be surprising that other government data released last week showed consumer retail spending in July decreased by 0.6%, the first dip in 9 months. Score that cause and effect. Jared Bernstein, a Stanford Institute for Economic Policy Research economist, told The Times, "The real hourly wage is absolutely the fundamental building block of working Americans' living standards. When it's falling in real terms, that is a huge problem for folks who are already stressed by affordability concerns. Those worries are now palpable in workplaces, and a mix of indicators suggest they risk becoming stronger over time. The first of those came in the University of Michigan's monthly survey of consumers for August, which found a mere 8% of respondents expect their income growth to exceed inflation in the year ahead. That figure plunged from 18% in December of 2024 and was called a reflection of the belief that high prices will continue to be burdensome and keep outstripping pay increases. Another sign of tightening employee finances came from Goldman Sachs economists. This month, they warned that the sugar buzz from higher-than-expected household tax refunds that helped fuel sustained consumer spending this year is about to burn off. Goldman said that those extra funds contributed to an annualized consumption increase of about 3.2% during most of this year, despite rising prices on gas, food, and other goods under the effects of tariffs and the Iran war. But now the bank expects post-refund real consumer spending growth to slow to 1 to 1.5% in the second half as real cash flow stagnates. But workers have been feeling a severe and spreading pitch for over a year now. Despite the popularity of employer-provided savings programs available to staff, a June employee survey by financial well-being company LearnLux found 88% of respondents reported some degree of economic stress due to both rising costs and insufficient liquidities. Similarly, nearly 60% of employees participating in a poll earlier this year by consultancy PwC reported being stressed about their finances. 3/4 of those respondents said the resulting pressure negatively affected their mental health and sleep, and over half blamed it for their decreasing workplace productivity. The PwC report said this is especially important when you consider younger workers, 85% of Gen Z respondents agree that financial stress affects their mental health, and 71% report reduced productivity. Overall, 53% cite rising cost of living as their greatest economic worry. What can concerned employers do to alleviate staff financial anxiety and bolster their business's performance at the same time? Unfortunately, apart from digging deep into your pockets and granting everyone raises at rates higher than inflation, your margin of maneuver is probably limited, as new research does show. Indeed, The Times pointed to a recent study by the University of Chicago's Becker-Friedman Institute for Economics, which analyzed pre- and post-pandemic pay practices from 2021 through 2024. What it found was that most companies tended to grant across-the-board salary boosts of 2 to 3% each year. Now, that was fine in normal times, but wound up being insufficient during periods of stronger inflation when nominal wages did not keep pace with prices for a large share of workers. However, there was one group of employees who found a way around that pain of that income-inflation imbalance. The report said that workers could escape sticky wage norms by changing employers. Job changers' wages rose nearly 1-for-1 with inflation, contrasting that with the financial fate of employees who stayed put. 43% of workers continuously employed at the same firm over the 4 years spanning 2021 through 2024 experienced a real wage decline, with a mean loss of roughly 9% among those who fell behind. Now, that suggests employers were unable or unwilling to increase salaries unless doing so became necessary to hire recruits for jobs they needed to fill, and that, in turn, may mean the financial anxieties that most employees are feeling today may require companies to link pay hikes to inflation rates soon in order to keep workers on board tomorrow. Because when the current remarkably sluggish labor market inevitably opens up again amid renewed growth of employment opportunities, businesses that failed to address today's inflation-income imbalance may find themselves facing similarly dizzying turnover rates of the Great Resignation period, as financially smarting workers bolt in large numbers to more lucrative jobs. That's a longer-term consideration of the affordability crisis. That's all for today. This expert opinion was written by Bruce Crumley. For more expert opinions from today's top business coaches and thought leaders, go to Inc.com/lead. Be sure to come back tomorrow for another helpful tip from Inc.